setting your clock 10 minutes faster than it normally is, so you're always so you have that 10-minute buffer.
Always chasing. Are we on? So 6:57.
Oh, are we on?
We had
so
gave a little cheat out.
Share,
6:57. Right? Yeah, share it.
Awesome. Share and start. All right. Boom.
Thank you, guys.
About to begin.
I don't know how many people join actually early. Artists, creatives are not typically on time or timely, and that's not a bad thing.
I think I just turned it off.
I think
you broke it.
Sorry, I already broke it. Share. Let's try that again.
Did you guys? I think if you share it, it's sitting out at share in your Facebook feed. That it doesn't have to be lively sharing.
Well, we'll just put that over there so it doesn't distract me, because I can be a little ADD at times.
Thank you, guys. It is Tuesday. It's 6:58 probably now, since we've been rambling for about a minute.
We have to change the name of the group. Tuesday at 6:58.
6:58.
I like it. Rolls off the tongue.
Exactly.
Although there are some people that watch live that are not in Eastern. To them, it could be Tuesday at 6.
Tuesday at 6. Tuesday at 5.
Tuesday at 9.
Or Wednesday at 7. I don't know.
Carol watches from Singapore.
Really?
Sometimes live,
cool
sometimes recording, and so we have folks all over the place that sign in. Carol's a special effects makeup artist that she and I connected some time ago, and she keeps an eye all on what we do.
Hey, Carol.
Beth, is that everything look good from your space?
It does now. It was looking a little weird. Sorry. I know the volume's... Yep. Okay. It looks good over here.
Sounds good. You guys can hear us, I hope. If you can't, let us know.
Yeah.
And we are glad to spend our Tuesday with you. For those folks who watched last week, Jill Bergner, special effects makeup artist, costumer. She's also, I guess you consider herself a model too, because she does a lot of that makeup on herself. She's an actress. And it was a great interview.
It was. Fascinating.
A lot of shares.
Yeah.
And we have Jill's giveaway, which for those of you who were watching, this was a centerpiece from her wedding. She had a few of them, but she had a American Horror Story themed wedding, and so she had these centerpieces. But if you go back and watch that, you'll hear that she was invited out to a Halloween party based upon the theme of her wedding and how well it was done. But she is giving away one of these centerpieces, and this is a legit... Feel the weight of that. This is a legit...
oh, yeah. Like when I was a kid. Yeah. Or even before that. Of course, I'm not that old.
This is an antique. I think worth a whole lot of money. But, so this was a centerpiece, and we're going to go ahead and draw a name out. And for those folks who watch week after week, if you share, your name goes in the hat. And then we draw that out next week, and we're going to do the same with Jill. But before we get to Jim's giveaway, let's draw this out. Thank you, Jill, for the interview. Thanks, everybody, for the shares. And this is going to cost a fortune to send out. And if Carol gets it in Singapore, we're going to have to figure out a way to make a road trip.
I was going to say vacation.
Rooting for you, Carol.
Yeah. All right, so everybody who shared, their name is in the hat.
Oh, I get to pick.
Yeah, you get to pick.
Oh, nice. Oh, the pressure. All right.
So just one there?
There's one.
All right.
Yeah, I'll give that to you.
Let's open that up. So only I can read my chicken scratches. All right. For Joseph Keenan.
Hey.
You are the winner.
Joseph. Congratulations. That thing is really cool.
Yeah.
That is really cool.
By the way, if you put a coin in the dog's mouth, it dunks it. So it still works too. I think that although this has sentimental value for Jill, and there's some cool meaning behind it, these things go for some money out there. So if we see it out on eBay, I'll probably buy it from you. All right, Joe, thank you for sharing. Thank you, Jill, for providing this. And for everybody who shares over the next coming week, before next Tuesday at 7 live stream, we'll put your name into a drawing. And Jim, tell us. It's an hour with Jim.
It's an hour with Jim.
An hour with Jim. But
I
here's
hope we didn't just lose a lot of people.
signing off. But as you guys probably have seen from kind of the introductions and kind of the little promo that we do, Jim is a podcaster. You're an author. Mm-hmm. You're a creative. I found out tonight you also do some sand sculpting.
Yeah, I do.
Marketing, all kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so for whoever picks it up can say, hey, I want to...
Yeah, so if you're Carol in Singapore, we'll Skype for an hour. We could talk, I could share my experiences on starting a podcast. If you want to know how to self-publish a book. If you have a business and you want me to review marketing or just talk about marketing or marketing direction for your company, or my podcast is all about trade shows. If you have a trade show coming up or you do trade shows and want some advice, so we could spend it however you want, or if you just want to get together and grab coffee, that's fine. I'm cool with that too.
Yeah. So. and if you, you also do consulting, and
yes,
this has some real value. A few $100 of value.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
You get to pick Jim's brain for an hour on whatever topic you want. Yeah. But I always like to ask a kind of a offbeat question to get things started. Okay. So my question is this. Reflecting back to your childhood, what is a memorable program that you watched and why?
A memorable program. It's not around anymore. Captain Kangaroo. I used to watch, and Beth is doing the happy dance back there.
Yeah, on the camera.
And it's just great memories. It was a fun time. I just looked forward to it. Right now I probably can't pinpoint one part of it. I just remember just setting that time, no DVRs, no nothing. So you had to be watching at that specific time, and just great memories. Great memories of that show. He was just so genuine. I mean, he was a goofball, and he was such a genuine person, and just felt comfortable just watching him. So that's what I would put out there.
Captain Kangaroo. Was it Mr. Green Jeans or something?
Mr. Green Jeans.
Mr. Green Jeans was on Captain Kangaroo. I watched that too.
Yep.
There's probably some folks watching going like, what the heck is Captain Kangaroo?
Google it, kids.
Google it. Or I'm sure you can watch some back episodes on YouTube, right?
I should do that. Oh my god.
Watch party.
Yeah. Hey,
watch party with Captain Kangaroo.
Captain Kangaroo watch party. That's how we'll spend our hour.
Hey, by the way, what are you guys drinking? Because sometimes we're tipping back a cold one. I'm actually out of a Midnight Syndicate mug. Drinking some hot tea tonight because I think this is going to be a hot tea kind of conversation for me.
And I've got water. I've got water also in the Midnight Syndicate mug, the 20-year anniversary commemorative mug, not just any Midnight Syndicate mug. So congratulations, guys, on 23 years.
Yeah, those guys are awesome. Obviously, those folks who know us, and you know that Midnight Syndicate are friends, and there were folks at Douglas we interviewed last year, right before Halloween. Right. All right, Captain Kangaroo. So that's great childhood memories. Do you, when you look back to childhood, what are some of those things that you remember that might have predicted that you'd be kind of in this creative podcasting, interviewing role? I mean,
I don't know. I guess one thing I did a lot. I used to sing. Mm-hmm. I used to sing. I sing today. I still sing it in church, and in grade school I used to sing a lot. And I never had a big fear of being in front of people. Never had a fear, and all the way through high school, college, giving speeches, things like that. I never had a problem with being in front of people. So it was encouraged. So that was probably part of it, is just singing and learning and going through that creative process of getting better. How do you find your voice, and how do you tune and learn how to sing along with, and so I think that was probably a big part of it. Also, I have two older sisters that are 8 and 9 years older than me, and I think just learning to defend myself against them. The stories I hear today about what they used to do to me when I was like 2 and 3 years old, it's amazing I'm alive. It really is. And so I think I remember my mom used to have an old fox stole that had the fox head and the paws, and my one sister was deathly terrified of it. So whenever they started picking on me, I'd find that thing and I'd chase around the house with it. So I don't know if that was,
way to get back.
if that got me into podcasting, I'm not really sure, but probably the singing, just having that opportunity at school and at church and stuff like that to be in front of people and seeing that it's okay. I'm not going to get hurt by doing this. No one's gonna throw stuff at me. At least they haven't yet. So.
Like the Little Rascals.
Oh
yeah. They were, if you didn't sing good, I mean, you did get pelted with some rotten tomatoes or something there, but it's good that you haven't.
Yeah.
The psychology of birth order probably has something to play in that as well. I mean, you're third. Yeah, there was a big gap there, and so you're like, okay, I'm gonna just put it out there, and I'm just gonna do what I do, and if people don't like it, well, so be it, and if you do, and then I'll be back, right?
Absolutely. Just keep going, man. Just keep going. Survival of the fittest.
So singing, was it like musical theater? I mean, what kind of where?
Well, it was more church stuff.
Okay.
It was singing at church. I really did. I did theater. I remember being in some plays. I remember being Abraham Lincoln when I was in like second grade. So one of these with a big stovepipe hat, and so there's those kind of memories. I don't remember ever singing in a play or anything like that, but it was just being able to have that. I went to Catholic grade school, so we had those opportunities every week to be able to sing and do stuff like that, and there was choir that we were involved with and stuff like that. So but no musical theater. That's the one thing I look back on in high school and I wish I would have done, but I was in a rebellious I'm not singing period of my life.
I'm not singing this week.
There's a whole story. I had a really bad experience in 8th grade of singing at church where they were playing the wrong music and I was in front and way far away from the musicians, and they were playing the wrong thing, and I remember just like turning around and going, what are you playing? And I just had to sing my thing, and that soured me, and I didn't sing for many years until I met my bride, and she was singing at her church, and I just started singing with her, and then started back up again, which is kind of been, it's been great. It's been awesome. A great part of my life.
I think there's a lot to be said about performing, singing, theater, things like that. I think it provides, I think at the time, kids, teens, adults, older adults are sitting there just going, or I'm nervous, but it really, I think, opens up opportunities for folks.
Oh, absolutely. And it does help you, I think, throughout life. The more you have the opportunity to be in front of people, and whether that's speaking or singing or dancing or performing, I think that just helps you in almost every career. Because you'll have times, even the most introverted person, which I really am an introvert by nature. I'm very introverted, even though I don't come across that way. But there's a lot of people that they're perfectly happy being back here, but there's going to be that moment that you have to do a presentation for your company, or you have to negotiate, or you have to do something that is going to be uncomfortable. And I think those opportunities that we get put in as kids and as we're growing up and even as adults, that kind of pushes you in the spotlight a little bit. That's all right. It allows you to grow. It allows you to stretch yourself, get outside of your comfort zone, expand that comfort zone a little more. I think it just prepares you for a lot of opportunities that come up. And if you're not comfortable, you may shy away from those opportunities. And that may be your next big break, your next big career move, your next big opportunity to get that part or get into, thank you so much for inviting me to the, I don't mean to tangent.
Please do.
I am very Ricochet Rabbit, and there's for the people who remember Ricochet Rabbit. but I got to, meeting everyone at the Maple Grove, everyone who came out for the Tuesday at 7 event a couple weeks ago. It was fantastic, and I got to meet so many great people from the film industry and artists and makeup people and singers, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome. So that next time you're looking to get into a gallery and you need to pitch somebody, or you're trying to get that new client. If you have your own business, that being in front of someone, you're performing. Mm-hmm. You're performing in one way or another. It might not be the standard what most people think of as performing, but you are. You got to be on. You got to be on your game. And you have to convince somebody to give you that chance, give you that shot. So I think it's so important.
Yeah. So you're performing, singing, college, and then you step in and have is it right that you spend some good time marketing and in sales and promotion for a career?
Yeah. So I went to Cleveland State, started as an accounting major because I'm good in math. Mm-hmm. So it was just fun trivia. I don't know, it's fun for me. Fun trivia. When I took my SATs, SATs have two parts. It was basically an English and a math. Each one's up to 800 points. And in English, I got 340 out of 800. Not real good. And then math, I got 790 out of 800. So I'm good in math. So I started as an accounting major. After 2 semesters, I'm like, there's no way. I am not doing this my whole life. I aced the classes. I'm just like, God bless all the accountants out there who can do math all day long and spreadsheets and stuff, and they love it and they enjoy it. It wasn't for me. But God has a good sense of humor. So me, 340 out of 800 in English, I end up being an author. So and so I go into marketing, and I have so I do a lot of copywriting, and so all of my jobs have been for the past now 30 years. Oh my God. Yikes. 30 years since I've been out of college, 31 now going on, have been in marketing. So I started at a phone book publisher. Those don't exist anymore. That was my first job. Then I went to Fannie Farmer Candies, an original cookie company, and Roadway Express Trucking. So made that natural progression from phone books to cookies to trucking. And eventually,
that's usually the path that most people follow.
Most people. Yes, I'm sure a lot of you can relate. And then eventually got to a place I was doing I was working for a consulting company, and funding cuts, and I lost my job, and then at that point I started a marketing consulting business. So did marketing consulting for 5.5 years, something like this. We'll round it to 6, around there, and I loved it. It was fantastic. Working with all the different companies and helping them really dive into what are your goals and what are you trying to accomplish, and helping them figure out their marketing so that they can reach their goals. It's just awesome. And then the recession happened in 2008, 2009, and everything went downhill. And just at that time, I landed another client, got a big market research study, and they hired me on board, and I've been there for 9 years, just about to hit my 9th year. So yeah. It's been awesome. So,
and my observation is that when I take a look at the creative community, and some folks are natural marketers, and some folks are like, listen, I paint. That's what I do. I paint, and I need somebody else to to help along. And so I think that tonight's interview is going to be some great information as folks are out there and come across some questions. As those questions come up, shoot them over, and Beth is taking a look at the camera, and she'll throw those out when they come up. So, and our banner when we were talking about this was TradeShow University, and we're going to bounce around here.
Absolutely.
And I like bouncing around too.
That's all I do.
So, consultant, market consulting, and then somewhere along the way, podcasting came up. And tell us about that journey, where it started.
Sure. It's I'll try and condense it because we only have an hour. So, or the 3-hour show tonight.
Hey, this
right?
is long form, long form live cast.
No, I was So I was the director of marketing for my company for 6.5 years. And then as part of that, I was doing a lot of training of our customers. And the president of the company came up to me one day and he said, Jim, he goes, the training you're doing, customers love it. And they said nobody else in the industry is doing it. And he said, I'd like you to start a whole training department. I'm like, he goes, you could stay doing marketing or go over to training. I'm like, let's do it. He goes, you want to think about it? I'm like, no, let's do it. I'm up for the challenge. And so I've done trade shows for my entire career, like 25 plus years of shows, hundreds of shows, either attending, planning, exhibiting, speaking at, whatever it was. I've done just hundreds of shows and have just tons of experience. And so my first show going as part of training, I said, hey, I've got to go and learn what this training thing's all about. I mean, I know how to train people, but there's more to it. There's an art to it. There's tools available. There's workshops, things like that. And so I found a big training conference, and I said, I'm going to go to that and see and just learn. So I knew nothing. I picked out it was a huge conference. It was like 430 booths. So 430 exhibitors, huge show. And I said, I went through the show website ahead of time, and I'm like, I picked up like 3 or 4 companies I wanted to stop and see. And so I get there and I start walking, the show opens, literally thousands of people were at this thing. And the doors open and I'm going down the first aisle and I'm going back and forth and trying to figure out who do I want to stop. And I'm reading and it's like all foreign language to me because it's all new acronyms, all new jargon and stuff that people have on their trade show. Then I'm reading and I'm like, no, I don't think and I go over here and no, I don't think and I get down the entire first aisle, past probably 30 booths, and I get to the end and I turn around and I'm going, what the hell am I doing? I don't know any more than I started back at the beginning of that aisle. And no one here is helping me to figure out what I need to know. Because I don't know anything. And these people are all very well intentioned, but I'm walking past and they're not helping, they're not drawing me and not asking me questions and doing none of this stuff, but they have beautiful displays and all this stuff. And so I started going, you know what? These people need help. Not professional help, but they need, professional from a guy like me who could help them with their trade shows. And so I just did a little survey and just started walking the show. And I said, I'm here for 3 days. I'll learn the stuff I need to learn about training. But let me just do a little survey of trade shows. And went up and down the booths, up and down the rows. I did it twice, walked the entire show twice, passed 430 booths twice. And of all those booths, only 2 grabbed my attention. 2 out of 430. That's less than 0.5%. So that means 99.5% of the booths did nothing, but weren't effective in getting my attention. Yeah. So I'm like, there's a need here. And the entire plane ride back to Cleveland, which was from the West Coast to Cleveland, I typed. And I created a whole system, and I'm like, okay, now how do I get this knowledge out to the world? And so I started listening to podcasts, and then after listening to a lot of great podcasts, I'm like, oh, what about podcasting? There's a way that hey, light bulb, and here's a way that I can actually get knowledge out there and build credibility and help people at the same time. That's what it's all about. It's about helping these companies. And I really have a passion for small businesses because everything's on the line for them. Yeah. Okay, and these big companies that they throw $500,000 into one show, and they got the huge displays, and they have like 20 people walking around the booths, and they're giving away the Yeti tumblers, and they're just spending money. And and of course, I'm sure they have goals and they want to get something out of it. But if they don't, another show's coming up in a couple months. But the person that's a small business owner and they have to close up shop to work the local community business expo for an afternoon, and they spent $200 that they probably had to take off a credit card to be there and invest that time and money. If they don't do it right, that could be a setback. Mm-hmm. That could really hurt maybe not hurt their business, but it's not going to do. And then they might be soured on ever trying that again. And trade shows are such a phenomenal marketing channel. And I get way more excited than I should be about trade shows, but people are going away from trade shows, and it's the fault of the exhibitors. It's because people don't know how to work a trade show correctly. And that's what the podcast is all about. That's what I am doing to try and get people to understand. It's not about your fancy display. It's not about your giveaways or anything like that. I learned that one long aisle walk down that past 30 or so booths, that I looked at all the fancy displays and the banners and looked at literature and the giveaways and all that stuff, and it didn't help me at all. What I need is people to explain to me and find out, so why are you here? What is it that you need? What are you looking for here? Oh, we can help you with that. Let me explain what we do. But don't start telling me what you do before knowing what I need. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's how the podcast came about. So it was kind of a roundabout way, and then just kind of bumping up against things and trying to figure out, what do I do with this? And then the podcast came about, and then just doing a lot of research around it. And how do I start a podcast? And what does it take? And what kind of equipment do I need so it sounds good? And how do I record it? And how do I edit it? And how do I get it on iTunes? That's a whole nother, so doing all the research around that and seeing that it was way more complex than I ever intended it to be. But it's been an awesome journey so far, and I'm excited. We're just getting started, I'm only a couple months in. Your episode that, and if anyone hasn't,
oh, no.
go to go to TradeShow University. Look up on iTunes or on Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify. It's on all those. And I have a 2-part interview where I interviewed Roger, and it was one of the best reviewed episodes because no one's ever heard this stuff in the trade show world before. They hear about how to order displays and how to buy the right pens for your booth and stuff like that, but they don't hear about how to bring improv into your booth and how to make a difference and how to stand out. People were like, whoa, that Roger was way out there, but I loved it because it was so valuable.
Yeah.
So that is what my goal is, to bring those kind of guests and viewpoints that people haven't heard before, that isn't the same old stuff that they've seen 20 articles already written about or heard people talk about or experienced at a show themselves, that they hear new things that they can take and help them stand out at a show and really get crush their goals.
Well, we have a lot of viewers. We have a lot of creatives that are very heavy special effects, acting, prop makers, etc. And there's 2 trade shows coming up. There's the Transworld Trade Show. There's Midwest Hunters Convention. That's a trade show.
Transworld technically anymore.
Yeah. I mean, two different shows. One really big, one regional, and this is timely because there's a lot of people out there that might say, "Oh yeah, I am exhibiting, and maybe I should share this in hopes to win an hour with Jim." So you could talk about that trade show.
Absolutely.
And we've gone to both. Well, we haven't been to the new Midwest Hunters Convention, but we've taught at and been to Midwest Hunters Convention with its previous owners, and I think it would be interesting because it would kind of be the reverse. Yeah. So you've got a bunch of hunters, whether they're making props or special effects or costumes, makeup, that type of thing, and where your folks were like kind of blown away by Roger's experiential improv for your more typical trade show. I think that haunters and those who are small business haunters, not the huge giant companies that have catalogs or large factories, but the smaller companies who don't necessarily get access to someone to just say, this is how to draw the crowd to you. You may not be a marketer, you may not be a salesperson. You're the guy in the back building the stuff, but you also have to be the face bringing people in and providing to them. Here are some basics on how to do that. and having access to your podcasts for this, different style of trade show could be incredibly impactful for a whole different crowd.
Yeah, absolutely. So. And if I think about that, I think about someone who, like some of the people that I met at the event, and they were already in full makeup. And those kind of people at one of the shows that I'm used to would completely stand out and draw attention.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But at a haunt, that kind of show, you blend in.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And so how do you stand out? And it's more than just the look. It's more than just to look at, especially at that show. It's what are you doing with that, and how do you really engage people and bring them in?
Well, we hit a specific point when we were teaching together. I mean, Roger had been teaching before I had, but we'd teach together, and you go to a haunt show and your average person is in black leather. They're in black, they're in makeup, they're in whatever. And after a while I was like, yeah, I'm going to wear white. Or I'm going to wear bright colors, fuchsia, red, tailored clothing, that type of thing. Because again, it's immediately recognizable even before I start talking. And, Roger wears haunt t-shirts for haunts that have closed, not that are necessarily going on.
Okay.
So
vintage.
It's not, vintage style. So we try to be intentional about, and it's very similar to the stage approach and gauge. It's like as soon as you see us, we're already conveying part of the message that we want to deliver. And that can be hard when you've got 30 booths and they all have clown costumes or haunt makeup or whatever it is. How do you stand out from that? How do you draw people in a way that is going to attract them and make them want to stay and get to know why your product is better, or the experience you're going to provide is more suitable for them.
And I think kind of magic of conversations like we're having now, and there's people that are listening to this live, or they're listening to it over the next several weeks or several months or several years, that are plugged into earphones. And the whole idea is, I mean, we're cross-pollinating ideas.
Yeah. So
that some of the stuff that you're doing on podcasting and that you've done in different trade shows can be brought over. Some of those that smart business marketing stuff. Some of this creative stuff can find its way over to the trade shows that some of these watchers are. I mean, they're not creatives. They may just be people saying, I need to figure out how to lift my banner and hand out pens. And so sharing those practices and ideas is the whole idea behind this. So, but here's my observation too. I've listened to most episodes, and I liked it. This last one was the Happiness Coach.
Yeah, the Happiness Coach.
Tell us a little bit about that, because that was unique. I love that.
Yeah, and I met her at a conference, and we were just we just happened to be standing in line to see Oprah Winfrey give a keynote speech. And as you can tell, that was a big conference. She doesn't just go talk at little events. And I've never been a huge Oprah fan. I always thought she had too big of an ego for my taste. But I'm like, you know what? She's a billionaire, and I can learn probably something from her. So I went, and I'm standing in line, got there really early, and there was a girl right next to me who we just struck up a conversation. And fast forward about a year, and she is the happiness coach. So I started talking with her, and I'm like, what do you do? And she says, well, I'm a happiness coach. And I'm like, well, that's not a title you hear every day. So actually, I do know one other happiness coach that lives here in the area.
Oh, yeah?
And I've known him. He goes to our church. I've known him for years. And but they take a completely different approach as a happiness coach. But what she does, she helps people find their joy. And so for a regular person, I'm like, well, who do you work with? She goes, well, I work with a lot of people who are a little quirky, who are a little more introverted, maybe a little more analytical. She goes, I work with a lot of engineers because they get so wrapped into and so focused into what they're working on and their problems and everything that they don't allow themselves to open up and have joy in their life. And so she goes, I want everyone to be able to enjoy and experience happiness in their life, and because that will then open up other opportunities within their life, because now maybe not all the walls are up, maybe they're a little bit more open. And she said, from a trade show standpoint, I help people do the same thing, and it's important for people to because you're going to have a huge mix of people and personalities and introverts, extroverts that are going to be working the booths, and not everyone is comfortable going in and approaching somebody when they walk into the booth or walking past, and that could be it could almost be stressful, and how do you get beyond that? And she's like, well, find what makes you happy and tap into that. She goes, it might be something completely random that nobody else in the booth is doing. Maybe you love building houses out of cards, and maybe you just start doing that, and by you doing that, someone's going to walk up and say, what are you doing? And that might be the opening you need to start a conversation. But it's whatever that is that you want to find, that thing that's going to kind of bring out your joy, bring out your happiness. And people are drawn to people who are happy. Mm-hmm. They are, and so just by doing that, even if you're not saying anything, people they sense your joy, they sense your happiness, they sense something a little bit different there. And so I love having people like that, and like you on the show, like I said, to bring that other kind of perspective that people haven't thought about. Yeah. So and she talked a lot about being authentic. Don't be phony. Don't try and fake the happiness because you're at a trade show and I've got to do this. Be authentic, because people spot that phoniness in a heartbeat, and they're never going to do business with you, and they're never going to hire you or do whatever you're trying to have happen at the show. So be authentic.
And they spot that authenticity as well, and they're like, that's somebody who probably knows what they're talking about, but I'm also drawn to them, and I want to exchange words and ideas.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. What other folks have you interviewed?
Let's see. Well, I've only done a few so far. I mean, I think today, or it was this week, when the Happiness Coach, and I think that was episode 16. So I've got a few more already completed, but the first person I interviewed was my daughter, who is a dietitian, registered dietitian, and her topic was how to stay energized when you're working a show. Some of these shows can be multiple days. You're on your feet, and on these show floors, you might be standing on carpet, but that is a thin carpet on cement. So your legs and feet are tired, and these shows could be 6-8 hours, and all of a sudden you go back to the hotel, you come back home or whatever, and you relax, and you're back at it the next day, and it wears you out. So how do you maintain that energy level? And so she brought her experience as a dietitian, nutritionist, to say, here's what you do, here's pack snacks, and here's what you should be eating for breakfast, here's what to avoid, make sure you hydrate, but not too much, because you don't want to have to run to the restroom in the middle of the show. So great tips. Yeah. And I got such great feedback. In fact, that's still one of the top listened to episodes so far, because no one's talking about it. No one's talking about it. So I've interviewed her. I have interviewed you. We had a 2-part interview there. I interviewed 2 phenomenal business coaches together on one episode, Robin Sachs and Angie Pullman, who are local here in Cleveland, Ohio. I worked with Robin years ago. We did, when I had my own marketing business, we did some public speaking together, and she is just a ball of energy and just humorous, and Angie is the same way, has a theatrical background, but they talked about bringing you to the show. Who are you? And being, again, that message of authenticity, but giving really, really good examples of exercises you can go through before you go to the show to help better understand what you're going to bring to the show. So they have been phenomenal. The next interview that I've got coming out is in 2 weeks, and that is with a guy who is a promotional products guy. So he sells promotional products. He's been doing it for a long time. So he talks about some of the trends, what things to look for. That's more of a standard trade show-y kind of interview. Another one that I've already recorded, just doing some editing, is a guy who does marketing automation. So how to use marketing automation. So using drip campaigns, using that follow up, using the tools available to you to be more effective on your follow up, on your pre-show marketing, on your social media, things like that. So that's a really, really interesting. He gives some great free tools that are available out there for people that are looking to find some tools, ways to be more effective on their follow ups and stuff. I've got. Oh my gosh, a couple other people that are one is a trade show, works for a large trade show company, and she works with smaller companies, helping them to prepare for big shows. So she's going to be coming up, and I've got a couple other people in the wings. One a public speaker, a national public speaker, talking about a lot of times at trade shows there's opportunities to give talks, run workshops, run seminars, and if you have that opportunity, how do you be on your game? Yep. And really it's not just going up there and reading off a script or having a PowerPoint, but it's engaging, and you've got to have goals. It's not just talking, it's having goals about what do you want to get out of this from your audience. So there's a lot of great interviews, and then I talk a lot by myself on a lot of these, just sharing my wisdom on and each episode is just one topic. And that's the way I want it. I want it to be people to be able to go through the episodes, find something that they're struggling with or they want to know more information on. And there's not a lot of small talk. Get right into it. And the episodes are short. They're usually around 20 minutes or so. Easy, usually on an easy commute or when you're at the gym or something like that. Pop in the earbuds and listen while you're running or doing cardio or whatever. I guess running is cardio. So. Little known tip.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I think that, most of us, even if we don't own our own business and we're just who we are, I think that those folks can find a lot of great tips. Because on Tuesdays you have Trade Show Tip Tuesday.
Absolutely, yeah, on the social media channels. So I give one tip a week, and that is just something that I think either is hopefully it's really helpful, and it's usually pretty short and sweet. Today's Tuesday, right? Yeah, Tuesday at 7, right? So, wow. See, time flies. I think it's Wednesday already. But today was avoid small talk. When you're at the booth, we just have a tendency to get into these little conversations and start talking about the weather or whatever city you're in. Hey, we're in Cleveland. Oh, did you see the Rock Hall? You're not from here, and don't do that because people don't care. And you shouldn't care either. You shouldn't be wasting your time or theirs. Get down to business. Not to be so blunt about it. Be friendly about it. But you want to get down to business. You want to qualify that person, and then you want to let them go. And let them get onto other booths. And then if you have a follow up opportunity, make sure you've got all the information you need, and then follow up later. So. Anyway, Trade Show Tip Tuesday. Sorry.
There's a lot of T's, alliteration, right? We're at a trade show a year. Sometimes we're exhibiting, sometimes we're participating. But I listen to your podcast because I think it applies to everyday life too, right? That's my opinion, right? And
it's common sense. It's a lot of common sense.
Even a tip like today, avoid small talk. I try to avoid small talk just in general. I'm like, let's have meaningful conversation with the people around us, and so that applies to my real life. And you had one in the last few weeks. Just smile, right?
Right.
Was that the trade?
That was a Trade Show Tip Tuesday. Yeah, always be smiling, and because people, if you have the choice, if you're coming upon a booth and two people are there. One person is smiling, another person is just standing there. Who you want to approach? Yeah, you want to approach the person that's smiling. It's just our nature to gravitate towards people that are happy and that are smiling, and that just kind of brings people in. So you never know that body language is so important. Yeah. But always be smiling. Always be smiling.
So those once a week reminders, you have your podcast, and then you have your ROI Friday.
ROI Friday. Yeah, the tagline to the podcast is get your PhD in ROI. Because trade shows are all about getting that return on the investment. You're investing time, you're investing money, you're investing resources. And so what are you getting back on that? But ROI is all throughout life. And so Friday's post, ROI Friday, is not talking at all about trade shows, but everything about things in life that you invest in. So the one last week was investing in exercise. And that is something that I didn't do for a lot of my life. I started running when I was 50. When I turned 50, that's when I pretty much started running, and have thanks to my daughter, who's the triathlete and has been pulling me along, kicking and screaming at times, into doing 5Ks and running up the terminal tower and doing all that kind of stuff. But that's one of those things you have to invest in. That is going to pay you dividends for life. Yeah. And so I talk about that every Friday. Give a little bit extra every Friday about just my thoughts on life.
And head into the weekend, right, on a high note.
Absolutely.
What day is the podcast, the new release of?
Podcast comes out every Monday. I started out at 2 a week, Mondays and Thursdays, and I just couldn't keep up the pace, so, to be honest. And so it's now every Monday. But every once in a while I get inspired, and I will do a quick episode, and I will publish it quickly, and I will release that on a Thursday. So I think I have a second Thursday episode coming up.
And it's TradeShow University.
TradeShow University is the so if you go on iTunes, go Google Play TradeShow University. The website is tradeshowu.biz. So tradeshow, the letter U.biz. And if you go on there, you'll see a button that says episodes, and you can listen to any episode right there on the website as well. And there's show notes to every episode. So if you go to the website, or even on Apple or on Google, you can find the show notes somehow. Each platform is a little different as to how you get there, but the show notes is a summary of all the high points covered in the episode. So it's not a complete transcript, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close to it.
The the platform podcasting, was attracted you for a reason.
Yeah.
What were some of the reasons that? And let me put that part of the question on pause for just a moment.
Sure.
When I interviewed with your podcast, I was sitting right on this corner chair, and I just had my phone in, and we were Skyping, and we were talking. We were in two different locations.
Yeah.
And you asked me questions. We recorded in two different locations, and you edited it and dropped it into a podcast.
Yeah.
When we're doing certainly the Tuesday at 7, we're live and we're next to each other. And I know there's some different things, but podcasting offers some stuff that is pretty cool. And and as I'm listening to some podcasts, I almost feel like I'm becoming a podcast junkie, because I'm like pressing the podcast button of some podcasts just about every day. If it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or it just gets fed to me and I click in. And I mean, you got people who are watching the Joe Rogan Experience and getting crazy about that, but but what about podcasting? What
Yeah,
why that?
Podcasting drew me in for a couple things. One, when I figured out that, wow, this is a way that I can build credibility and build an audience, at some point be able to make money from this. And so I'm like, I like that. I like that idea. Whether that's through consulting or what I've come to find out, that there's a lot of avenues where you can make money through podcasting, whether that's through sponsors or advertisers or through affiliate links or anything like that. So, and I also found out, I got started listening to a podcast called Entrepreneurs on Fire, which is a guy who interviews a different entrepreneur, successful entrepreneur, and just talks about their story and where they came from and how they make it successful and what are they doing today and stuff like that. And it's just very intriguing and very high energy, and they're about a half hour. And I started getting hooked on that. And I started listening. And then he did an episode called The Income Report. And I'm like, what's this? It was just him talking about his income that he made from the podcast. I'm like, ooh, okay. All right, let's. I'm listening to this, and he's like, yeah, our income from last month, revenue was $172,000, and our expenses were $30,000, and so we had a gross profit of $142,000. And I'm like, did he say 140 last month? Not yeah. And I know that's like the top 0.001% of all podcasts, because this guy's been doing it forever. He's got thousands of episodes, and he's just blown up over time. And I don't ever expect to get to that. If it happens, I'm perfectly fine with it.
Yeah,
but I'm guessing that but can this be a nice side revenue? That would be cool. That would be nice to be able to, take care of our bills, put more away for retirement, whatever. I've got a wedding coming up in 7 months. 7 months. Sorry, Brittany. In 7 months. And possibly another one coming up in a couple of years. So, there's a lot. And I'm like, wow, this is a not only a platform that can build credibility, but also can also monetize. And another thing that I thought was really, really cool is that, as opposed to radio or any other medium, the studies have shown that when people start listening to a podcast episode, unless it just doesn't resonate, they listen to the whole thing. And that could be, people say, I've done a lot of research about podcasting. I listened to a lot of guys talking about podcasting, and they say, people say, well, how long should my podcast be? And they're like, as long as it needs to be. For some people, 10 minutes is too long. But then for others, an hour and a half, you want it to keep going, and there's, and for the creatives that are tuning in today, that are storytellers, there are so many phenomenal podcasts that are just stories that go from chapter to chapter to chapter and are highly creative, or people talking about getting into the film industry or getting into whatever business you're in. People are intrigued by people's stories, and they want to learn and they want to listen. And so it's just however long it needs to be. And that is why I think Spotify just invested like a couple $1 billion into their podcast platform, because they said people will listen to this. They don't tune out at the commercials. They don't switch to another podcast when the sponsor comes on in the middle of the show. They stay engaged. And so that was another thing that was really intriguing, is that people will listen all the way through, even though I only have one sponsor so far. but it's hopefully that more are coming. But yeah, hopefully that answered some of the questions.
Absolutely. And you can go ahead, and I know that my phone downloads podcasts, and so I can listen to it in the car.
Yeah.
So I can catch up on this podcast.
Oh, and that's another thing. It doesn't matter where you are. You can listen to it. You can listen to it at your desk. And I encourage people, in my bio, I say, hey, listen to it at your desk. You're doing something for work, so your boss shouldn't get mad at you. But yeah, you could listen while you're on the treadmill. You could listen to it anywhere. You're not going to lose reception. And you could download it. So even if you're on a plane and you have to turn off the Wi-Fi or turn off your cellular data, you could still listen to those podcasts that you have downloaded already, which is really, really cool.
Yeah. If folks have any questions out there, I know that there probably is. And for those folks who are sharing, you have the chance for everybody who shares, their name goes into a hat. And next week you get 1 hour with Jim, and you could meet at Krispy Kreme and eat a donut and drink coffee, or you could get some great marketing for those folks who have trade shows come up. Or I mean, you were a consultant for years as well, and you're consulting now. But
anything with marketing, anything with anything you want to talk about, but that would be able to help you out. And if you're not local here to the Cleveland area, then we could Skype for an hour or whatever works for you. We'll make it work. But looking forward to meeting whoever it is that shares and gets picked.
We're going to talk about some other things, but I think Beth kind of motioned that it might be a question or so.
Yeah. I just have to scroll up to it. So Jessica Donich is watching. She owns her own business, and she used to do trade shows.
Okay.
So she was asking, that's why I had asked about the website and the podcast, because she's interested in checking that out.
Thank you.
Jill Bergner asked if you can help with websites at all.
I can. I have a company that I work with. I mean, it depends if you just want a standard website or there's a special podcast website that I have gotten. So if you want to do a podcast, I can point you in that direction. But yes, I could definitely get you a resource. I don't personally do websites. I consult on websites with copywriting and stuff like that. But I have a phenomenal company local here in the Cleveland area that does websites that I refer to, and they're very reasonable and do a great job.
And then Jill also said, sorry, I didn't want to sneeze.
Right in the microphone.
Yeah, that would have been bad.
Hey. Jill says, I like the phrase be authentic. People say be yourself, but be authentic makes more sense.
Absolutely. Agree with you, Jill.
I agree with that greatly. Jill is really gunning to get that hour with you.
Love it. Love it.
Let's see. There was somebody else said something, but I don't. Sam White was really hoping he won the bank, and I know he didn't, but who won the...
Oh, who won the bank?
Yeah.
Joseph Keenan.
That's right.
Joseph Keenan. Sam shares every week. Thanks, Sam. You are a trooper, and
He
tell you
offered
what.
to buy the bank from whoever won it. So.
Oh, okay. I mean, we'll have a little bit of instant message. You could probably, Joe, you could connect with Sam and figure out. Let me know where to send it.
Yeah, really. There you go.
Excellent. I think that was it as far as... Yep, that was it thus far.
Yeah.
Well, but you're not just a podcaster. You shared that you did some that you enjoy doing some sand sculpting.
I do. Unfortunately, in living in Cleveland, I don't get to do it as often as I'd like. But it was something that we were on vacation several years ago. I think it was probably a good 20 years ago, at a resort up in Canada, and they had a tiny little beach. And my kids were small at that time, and I remember we were just playing on the beach, and they were going in the lake, and I just started molding things, and I just kept going, and then I made something. I couldn't tell you what I made that day. People were like, "Oh my gosh, that's so good," and I was like, and I loved it. It was very therapeutic, just sitting there I would sit there for hours and just create this big mound, and then just start pulling the sand away until something formed. And so now whenever we do have a beach vacation, that's like one of the highlights for me is like my wife, my beautiful bride, and I were in Punta Cana, the Dominican Republic, a year and a half ago, and they had great sand. And I just turned to my wife and I said, "You mind?" And she goes, "Go right ahead." I mean, she was sitting under the little thatched umbrella with a cold drink, and she was reading a book, and she was perfectly happy. And I just went to town, and every day I think I made something a little different. I spent a couple hours, and I just love doing it. So I have one of those talents that just came up out of nowhere. I had never taken any classes, never tried anything like that before, never any pottery or sculpting or anything like that. But sand, I don't know, there's something about that, and the waves kicking up on the beach that is just so relaxing and therapeutic. And if I could make a living doing that, sign me up. That would be amazing.
Well, Matt Seal, I mean, he just sculpted something just this past evening, and the same thing. I mean, it's like clay, take away, add, and so
I may have to try clay.
Yeah.
I may have to try a different medium that is not sand, although there's something about being on the beach.
Oh, yeah. That tactile experience.
And the sun, especially here in Cleveland. I miss the sun. But yeah, I love it.
And coming from somebody who scored so high on their SAT in mathematics, right?
Yeah.
But you and not as high in your English, but you're also an author, right? So
I am.
Tell us, are you writing a book now?
I'm finishing. It's not. Let's see. This book has been. I'm working with a former client of mine. He is 86 years old, and he. Back in the 50s and 60s, he started a real estate company. It became one of the largest real estate companies in the Cleveland area. He had like 280 agents or something like that, and he had like 7 or 8 offices around the city. Eventually got into commercial construction. Has built a lot of the things, a lot of the buildings in Independence that we know about. Berea Commons. Built all that. He's built apartment buildings, and he wanted to get his story out. And so he called me. This was about 3 or 4 years after I stopped doing my own marketing business. And he says, "Hey Jim, I want to write a book. I want to write a book, and I want you to help me." And so we worked on a book, and it's called "The America I Grew Up In." And he was the son of an immigrant who came here from Italy. And he talks about, there's a lot in there about the history of Cleveland and how it got started. Not how it got started, but how it was in the 20s and 30s and during the Depression. And it's just amazing, and things that I had never thought of before. And he said, all the Italians, they lived within walking distance of each other. And that's where you find St. Rocco's Church, because Italian. And all the Germans, lived in the same area, and then the German Saint, whoever the German saint is, and then in the Russian area, Saint Vladimir, and then and you have these pockets, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense, because no one had cars, and you stayed by the people that you knew and the culture that was familiar to you, and then over time became the melting pot. And he's like, we learned English, we wanted. My father would not let us speak Italian in the house. He goes, "No, I came here and I got my opportunities because I was able to speak English." He goes that, and the time, obviously the times were different back then, but there's something to be learned from that. And he goes, "I want people to learn that I worked so hard." He goes, my dad had a coal yard, and at 7 years old, we had a train track that came through our yard, and it would stop, and we would unload the coal. And at 7 years old, I'm with the shovel, pulling coal out of a coal car, and I loved it because I was helping my family. He goes, today my parents would be in jail for allowing me to do that. And there's probably
requiring, right?
Yeah. There's probably some truth to that. He goes, but I would do that, and then my aunt would hose me down at the end of the day because I was covered in coal soot. He goes, but that's where I learned my work ethic. And every job I had, I outworked everybody because I learned it when I was a kid. He goes, I see my grandkids, and they don't have that. And he goes, I want people to understand how important that is. That, maybe not making kids do hard labor, but giving them jobs around the house and having them do things around the neighborhood, maybe mowing someone's yard and things like that. That's a good thing. Yeah. And then you can actually earn money from that. So that's a long story behind. I wrote that book, and then he wanted a little follow-up book to go with it, which is only going to be maybe 20, 30 pages, but it's kind of more of a really bringing it to today and what's been going on in the country and the division and things like that. And he goes, it didn't used to be like that. He goes, politicians all work together, and this is not a political stance on anything. This is just, he goes, they would work for the good of everybody. It wasn't we don't believe in that, and so we're not doing it. We don't vote that way. And it's like, no, things don't get done that way. Things get done when everyone kind of steps back and go, that's right. That's the right thing to do, and this is good for everybody. So that was his thoughts. And at 86 years old, he's amazing, and I think he still is a part. He goes to work at his son is now taking over now they're a hotel development company. And so they own several hotels in this area, and they just built one in near Mall of America in Minneapolis. And he still goes in the office and helps consult with his son, and which is really, really cool. So that's the latest thing. I have a couple other small ones that I've been working on. My first book was a guide to prayer and for teens, and called When Will Things Start Looking Up? And it was got some great awards a couple years ago. I don't want to go into that, but it was fantastic, and I've had stories that made me cry of people that have read the book and came back and said, "Oh my gosh, this changed my life."
Well, it's especially at a time where teenage years are so tumultuous, and there's so much despair and depression that are there. To have a book out, a resource like that out there is great.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. So I am working on another book, and it's all about individual stories of people who have kind of followed that call in their life, whatever that call might be. And if I don't want to take up too much time.
Oh here. Yeah.
But I got the microphone.
It's your interview.
So I'll just tell you the impetus of this. I was going to Orlando on business. And so I'm a huge Disney fanatic. My family, we love Disney. I cry at every Disney movie. I'm the biggest baby. Total transparency there. My wife is probably shaking her head right now, but that's okay. Don't say that. No, everyone knows. It's no secret. So I was, before we're getting ready to go on the plane, I love just sitting at the gate and watching all these families and these little kids pulling their little Mickey Mouse pilot bag behind them and have their Disney T-shirts and all sorts of stuff like that. And the mouse ears, a couple little girls with the mouse ears, and they're wearing the princess stuff, and so I'm just loving seeing these happy families. And then they start boarding, and so I get on there, and I love my aisle seat, so I got my aisle seat, and the two seats next to me were still empty, and I'm watching all these families come on. These little kids are like, they've never been on an airplane before, and they're like 5 years old, and they're just like, this is so cool. And so they're coming on, and then I had a mom and I think it was like 7 or 8 year old boy. So, we've got these seats. And so they go in, and I sit back down, and I'm on, we're all getting settled, and I just said, hey, so you have do you have a fun trip to Orlando planned? And the mom says, actually, we just lost our 21-year-old daughter to cancer after a several-year battle. And this is our first trip away as a family. I have no idea what the expression was on my face, but if you would have asked me, what is she going to say after you ask if they're going to Orlando? That was like the furthest thing from my mind. And I probably looked stunned because she said, it's okay. Can I tell you about her? And then for the next hour and a half, we talked about her daughter, who was one of the most amazing stories. She died at 21. She first got cancer, I think, like 12 or 13 years old. Went into remission, and then for the last, I think, 2 or 3 years, she really battled. But the stories about every person that came into her hospital room, the doctors, the nurses, everyone. She's like, "How are you today? How you doing, doctor? How you feeling today? How's your family?" She got to know everyone personally, and she didn't want to talk about her. "Yeah, I'm okay. I'm in a little bit of pain today, but tell me about your son. How does basketball game go?" And faith was a huge thing for her, and so she was asking people about their faith, and just don't pass this by. Don't pass by your faith. Don't let it sit. Let it be part of you. And she was ministering to people from the hospital bed. And so, I cried. The mom cried. It was a very emotional flight. But I stayed in touch, and I said, "Can I write a story about your daughter?" And so I wrote the story, and I sent it to her. We went back and forth and edited and about all the things. And her daughter came up with this thing called, her daughter's name was Kaylee. And Kaylee's Kits, I think it is, but she created this kit of, and got donations of nail polish and lip balm and lipstick and makeup. And she created these, and she wanted to donate these for other girls in the cancer ward who don't feel very pretty and don't feel very special, and whose friends all of a sudden just stopped coming around because they felt too uncomfortable. And this has been, I think she's passed away maybe 4 years ago, and they still hand out these kits at the hospital where she lived. So that is the first story of this next book. And I've written 2 or 3 other stories and have some other stories going. This is a very, very long-term book because of everything else going on. But it's about people who have just kind of stepped back and put others first, and kind of went after their calling, and whatever, as I believe God calls everybody to something, and she heard her call as to minister from that hospital bed. So that will be a book at some point. It's kind of called Tales from the Burning Bush, because the whole story of Moses and the burning bush, God called Moses to get his people out of Egypt, and Moses said, "No, I'm not your guy," and God said, "Yeah, you are." Yeah, and Moses, no, what if this and what? God said, just shut up. You're the guy. And so, I just truly believe if he has a plan for you, that he's got a protective bubble around you, and you're gonna do that plan as long as you're on the right path. If you completely refuse, then obviously that's something else. But if he wants you to do something, he's gonna allow you to do it. So anyway, so there you go. That's my author.
Yeah, and you. It doesn't sound like you sleep a whole lot. It sounds like
not enough. Probably, as my daughter would tell me, not enough. But it's okay. It's all right. There's time to sleep later.
What advice, as we're kind of winding down here? Yeah. What advice do you have for, creatives, folks? Yeah. That little tips that you've learned along the way that you're like, hey, if somebody walks away with something about me, these are a couple things or little cheats.
Well, number one, just like Nike said, just do it. Yeah. Okay, if you've got an idea, don't put it off. Don't put it off. If the idea's in your brain now, get started, even if it's a little tiny step. You don't have to. Don't second guess yourself. Don't say, well, what if this? No, just put all that aside and just say, I'm gonna just get started. Little baby steps, and the more you step, the further along you're gonna get. But the time is now. The time is not in a couple weeks, because life happens to all of us in various forms, and you may never have that opportunity again to start now. And it's never too late. Like I said, I started running when I was 50, so I'm, and I've done some races, and I did something very stupid as far as the thinking that something that a 53-year-old shouldn't be doing. I tried doing the warped wall, like the Ninja Warrior, if anyone watches that. I tried doing a warped wall. I actually got to the top, and I pulled my calf muscle pretty bad too at the same time. So yesterday was the first day I got back to the gym, and I ran, and it felt great. And so just do, and just go after it. Just go after it with everything you got. Wake up early, stay up late. It's tough at times, but that's what I do. When I wrote my book, I would wake up. I just said, I'm waking up an hour early. I don't have time during the day. I don't have the time. So carving out the time didn't exist. That wasn't an option. So I'm like, okay, the alarm is going to be set an hour earlier. And so for that hour every morning, I wrote. And that's what I did. And the podcast, I don't have time, but you make time. And so we canceled cable. And I said, I don't have time to watch TV anymore. And so I'm doing other things now. And I'm much more focused with my time. Focus is not an easy thing for me, because you could see I go from... My assistant at work got me a little pewter squirrel that sits on my desk, because a squirrel, because that's me. That's what I do. And so it's focus and just go after it and just give it all you got. You got one life, and just live it. Just go after it. Make a difference. 2020,
2021. Is it weird to say that?
Oh, yes.
2020, 2021. What is maybe a year or so? What does that hold for Jim Cermak and perhaps your family? So, what does it look like? Or
that's a great question. I would like to say that the podcast has taken off and just have thousands and thousands and thousands of listeners. And that we start making some money from it. I would love that. Aside from that, every day, I just kick butt at work, and the podcast, and maybe and we'll see what happens. Like that book thing came out of nowhere, and I'm like, okay, and so maybe some new consulting opportunities will come out of it. Maybe some other things, but I just want to be better, and I want to continue to make a difference. And in everything that I do, I've heard people say, "Well, you got to have balance in your life." No, you just, whatever you're doing, it's 100%. You got to be on. You can't be having your phone, and we don't multitask. Yeah. We can't multitask. So whatever you're doing, when you're with your family, be with your family. If you're with your significant other, be with them. When you're at work, be at work. When you're watching Tuesday at 7, be all in.
You're here. Well, Jim Cermak, a podcaster, author, smiler,
hey,
creative. Sand Sculptor. We thank you for spending this Tuesday.
This has been a blast, and it flew by.
Yeah, and it's there's going to be people watching this thing for years to come. It's 2020. It's just the beginning, so we're starting off a new decade here. For those folks who are sharing, if you share in this next week we're going to draw out of the hat, and if you win an hour with Jim, you'll have as a enjoyment-filled hour as I think that we've had this past hour. Jim, you're an amazing guy. Thank you for inspiring us for the hour.
Wonderful. This has been
and
wonderful.
Folks, we appreciate you spending your Tuesday nights with us as well. Share away, and we will be in touch next week. Oh, we've got an amazing interview next week, but I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag here yet. Keep an eye out for it, and we'll let you know.
And thank you for the lovely and talented Beth behind the camera.
Thank you. Bravo. Have a great week, guys.